One word, and that is chaos. Most people have a relationship with chaos in a negative way. We have been domesticated. We can even call it human husbandry to be docile and to have a form of false security. It's a false pretense to think we live in a secure world. It's not the normal state of human beings. If you really look back at our history as hunters and gatherers, and even in more recent times, even back in the medieval times, or even before the Industrial Revolution, there's no such thing as security. Since pre-circa or since 1945, after World War II, we had this sense of so-called security. Anytime that you give up your rights for more security, it is fake security. It's a perceived security, when in reality, what you are is just another cog in the machine. And so now we're in this situation of COVID, where people are scrambling around the world to figure out what's going to happen to them. I understand it's a natural mechanism. People are trying to survive. No different than if you corner an animal. What happens? The animal fights back. And people are screaming. People are pissed off. And I'll be pissed off too. I think what the government has done globally has overreacted. Man, the writing's on the wall with this virus. I knew about this virus in early January. Who the fuck am I? I'm a guy that follows people on Twitter and tweets a little bit, makes videos. If I knew about it in January, telling me Secret Service didn't know about it in December or even earlier, of course they did. Anyways, the governments have overreacted and we're in this horrible situation. Numbers came out today. We're looking at 28 million unemployed in the United States, upwards of more than 25% of unemployment. Canada's talking about the same thing, upwards of 20% unemployment for a population of only 35 million people. This isn't a depression. This is greater than the Great Depression. We're entering a depression with a recession. But the question is, what can you do? The number one thing you can do is understand there's no such thing as security. The number one thing that you can do is become agile. I'm going to lay down some thoughts where I think we're going. Number one, we are entering into more of an authoritarian state where privacy is eroded, where your rights are eroded. Think about this. They're giving out tickets for people in a park. The government is telling you to rat on your neighbors. You know, my family's from former Yugoslavia, and they had that system, the ratting system. Neighbors ratted on each other. You know what happened there? I don't need to tell you the story. Same thing that happened in fucking Nazi Germany. They had propaganda everywhere about ratting on your neighbors. These are old tricks, but a lot of people fall for this. It's herd mentality, as René Girard says. It's mimesis. Monkey see, monkey do. People don't have a sense of community. People don't have a sense of belonging. And people don't value their own sovereignty. They'll sell your fucking ass out before they even help you out. But keep that in mind, governments promoting this. We've seen what happened in the past. It may not repeat itself, but the past sure does rhyme. And so our privacies are being eroded. Our sovereign right is being eroded. And the government is making so that we're becoming more reliant on them. They're talking about stimulus checks, $2,000 a month. They're talking about printing unlimited money. They're talking about going into MMT. They're bailing out every single industry in the world. Trump just the other day said they want to start paying oil producers not to drill. They're talking about bailing out hotel industry, airplane industry. The top 5 stocks are popping off because they're getting trillions of dollars and they're doing buybacks. People are now not even going to work. It was just reported in New York State, the average salary for in this particular circumstance was $48,000, but with the stimulus check and all the other beneficiary checks they get, they were making $51,000. So they were making $3,000 more not working than if they were working. And then the people who need employees, they can't find anybody. But it's no shit. I don't blame the people for staying home for making $3,000 more. Human beings are very simple. We're incentive driven. Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. If the incentive is I can sit at home and make $51,000 and not work, why the fuck would I work? This is what socialists don't understand. This is why so-called closet economists in Harvard that never ever ran a business don't understand. Business is simple. There's a supply and demand equation. There's there's a cost of labor or cost of production. I need to make a margin on this. It hurts my head how complicated these so-called economists make it, but like I said, they're fucking keyboard economists. They never fucking ran a business. They couldn't run a business. They put everything into a deficit. And so where are we going? Well, these are the things that's going to happen. As I've been mentioning before, we are leaving globalism and we're entering localism. So basically, that being said, focusing more on local things. Farmland, I've been very bullish on. I think if you have the opportunity, the know-how, and if you have the insight, definitely start looking into farmland. So regenerative farmland, polyphase farming in Ontario alone in the last couple of years, 10% return every year for farmland. And depending on where you go, it's quite cheap per acreage. Some places much more expensive. That's real estate. But it's one of the best return on investment that you can get. Not to mention that the food supply is the number one thing. So there's going to be a war in China. We are entering a Cold War. This is one thing, the silver lining in this whole COVID thing is a lot of people are realizing how fucked up the CCP is, Chinese Communist Party. Not the Chinese people, not the Chinese nation, but the fucking evil party in power over there that has 2 million Uyghurs in camps, that locked up people by welding the apartment buildings, by killing the doctors and killing the lawyers that were trying to warn us early. Like, people have cognitive dissonance. The Chinese Communist Party is not a fucking good party. The human rights violations that they do is obscene, like absolutely obscene. If you want more information on this, look into the Human Rights Foundation with Alex Gladstein. And so we are going to be entering a new Cold War with China. A lot of companies are going to be pulling out of China. Trade is going to stop happening with China. And the U.S. dollar will be remaining in U.S. I just had the interview with Brett Johnson earlier talking about the milkshake theory, how U.S. will suck up all liquidity around the world because of the premium of the dollar. It's Gresham's law. Bad money drives out good money. Bad money is going into the United States and is driving out good money because nobody wants to spend the U.S. dollar. And so you need to figure out how to protect yourself. I think the opportunity going in the future is focusing on localism, focusing on farmland, focusing on figuring out your supply chain where you are. So whether that is your e-commerce company or any type of company that you want to create, if you need to be reliant on the Chinese supply chain, you're going to have a lot of troubles going in the future, whether that is taxation issues, whether that is shipment issues. Remember, the reason why a lot of these ships from China come over here in North America is guaranteed by the U.S. Navy. If the Navy pulls out, you're going to have a lot of shipment delays based on other nations because China has pretty much no Navy. And you know, in countries they have to fucking go by, and a lot of countries they don't have a good relationship with. So I think the whole supply chain with China is going to be slowly drying out. It's not going to just be pull the pin, but more or less that supply chain is going to be very at risk, I would say. And I wouldn't bet on any business relying on the Chinese supply chain. And that means you need to start focusing on supply chains within your locality. In North America, focus on North America. It doesn't have to be Canada. It can be Mexico. It can be Canada. Maybe even products in the Caribbean, but more or less the whole North American area. And then really understanding that you have to be agile. We just don't know what's going to happen. The problem is a rule book is out. So you look at economic policies, you look at rules. For example, the Federal Reserve can't legally buy junk bonds, but they make an SPV to buy up the junk bonds. And so they're just making up rules as they go. Who knows? Maybe tomorrow literally they change a rule that the Treasury is in power or the Fed. Who knows? Maybe Trudeau makes rule that everybody wants to have UBI. That changes the dynamic of business. If people are getting $2,000 a month, every single month, that changes labor costs. That changes rent costs. That changes a lot of shit. The governments don't have second order, third order thinking. But you, as an entrepreneur, you as a sovereign individual, you need to figure out how you can adapt to this. And I'm going to be focusing on things on I really believe that if you don't create proper contingency plans in case things happen like this, you will fail. But the beautiful thing about this, we're in a circumstances where nobody really knows what's going on. There's theses, there's hypotheses of what's going on, but nobody really does know what's going on. And so I wouldn't worry too much as long as you have the ingenuity and the not even the willpower, but the capacity to face fear and the capacity to be like, hey man, I'm going to start from scratch. See, a lot of people have the sunk cost bias. If you're that one of those people like me that's like, I fuck it, man, I'll start from zero every time. I just don't care. It's fun, in fact. Like, fuck it, put me on the street with no money, no nothing, and I'll fucking win anywhere in the world, anywhere. And so if you have that mindset, I'm like, I'm going to fucking go out there and do it, you'll win, man. No doubt about it. In fact, My predictions is I think business is going to be easier going in the future. It's going to be more of a challenge for intellectual capital, like the old way of doing business. But what I mean by easier is a lot of people will opt out because they deem it difficult. In chaos like this, in recessions and depressions, a lot of people are depressed and they don't want to actually do anything. So if you're one of these diamonds in the rough who's willing to stand out, who's willing to push, who's willing to fight, who's willing to be agile, who's willing to go out there and just fucking dominate, you will win. You will win. I know there's one golden rule, man. Like, there's always opportunity, even though we have stagflation most likely coming in and we have immigration issues. We're going to have a trade war with China, more or less going to be a cold war with China, not just United States. I think it's going to be a pact. We're going to have a European, Canadian, American pact against China. But no matter what, there's opportunity, right? It's a zero-sum game when it comes to the market. Money needs to go somewhere. Investors need to find yield in both, whether it's VCs or angels or public markets or real estate. Yield needs to be found. And if governments are giving out negative yield and bonds are garbage, which they are, junk bonds are everywhere, trust me, investors are looking for alternative classes. So why Bitcoin's taking off. So I think in general within the Bitcoin community, I'm very bullish right now. Gold, metals as well. But within the entrepreneur space, the startup space, I think we're entering a period of really interesting new types of businesses that focus on locality, focuses on community. And if you can solve problems for your locality, you'll do good. And I'll leave it at that, guys. Don't be fearful. Fear is a weapon they use against you. Don't ever give up your rights. Be wary of anything the government says. And just be ready to fight and be ready to be agile, and you're good to go. I'll leave it at that, guys. Peace out.